Hey, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Easton Library Community Book Chat. And today we have a great guest. We have the ER9 Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Jason McKinnon. Dr. McKinnon, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. Nice to see you, Kristine.
Yeah, and it was lovely to meet you. We just met in person like 10 minutes ago here at the library.
I know the library is so lovely. I have to do some more work with you over there, and perhaps we can talk about reading some books to some students. It'll be fabulous.
I would love that. We have some really nice relationships with the individual schools. And yeah, we would love to work with you in any way that we possibly could. That'd be fantastic.
That'll be lovely.
Yeah, that's great. So you just finished up your first year as the ER9 superintendent. What were the highlights?
Well, I started actually at the end of September. And the reason why I bring that up is because normally when a new leader starts in a school district, they start in July.
Mm-hmm.
And they have that long runway before school starts. And that is important time because you really get to learn more information about the type of school district that you're working for, what the district's priorities are. You get stakeholder feedback, and you start to learn kind of where the district was and where it's going. And I didn't have that time. I kind of started right in the mid, not at the beginning of the school year.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was jumping on the treadmill and running, and the school year just ended. My highlights were really just meeting everyone, meeting the students, getting to know everyone. It's really important to me to connect with the kids so that when they see some guy walking around in a suit, they don't think it's the first selectman or someone else or a detective. And I think I achieved that. People knew who I was, and they knew that I was the superintendent. And because I brought a kangaroo to school, that's always really helpful when you do that.
Oh, it made a huge impression. From my daughter said he was super soft.
Super soft.
Very soft.
And yeah, so I kind of made a deal with the kids. I'm like, I'll bring a kangaroo to school if you follow my Instagram page. And I think I have like 1,600 followers. I got it within a week. And it was a great way to connect with the students because they're all on Instagram. So that was my highlight, really getting to know the faculty. They're such talented teachers.
Mm-hmm.
This really is a high quality school system. And then getting to know the different players in each of the towns, like yourself. So that's really the highlight, really just getting to know the people.
Yeah, it is. It's a great school system, and everyone who works there, in my experience, and I have a rising senior right now, and since kindergarten in the school system. So the experiences I think that I've had just in my own life are wonderful. They're really great.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Yeah, very good.
Great.
So the book you chose today is called The Culture Code: The Secrets of Highly Successful Groups by Daniel Coyle. So tell us a little bit about why you chose this particular book.
Well, I think culture is extremely important in a school system, and a school system is just like an organization or a company in a lot of ways. And the way in which a culture is defined in an organization is really important to establish its values. And so I mentioned before, when I started at the beginning of the school year, I didn't have a lot of time to research and to focus on what are the values, what are our belief systems in the school system. And during the budget process, which was really really December through March, we focused on what our fiscal priorities are for the school system by developing a kind of a budget, because every budget is a blueprint, right, for kind of what the district's priorities are. And during the budget process, I talked a lot about, we really need to develop strategic priorities for the school system so we know where do we need to fund certain programs. And in doing so, I started having conversations with some stakeholders about what should our priorities be. And I asked everyone two questions. What should the ideal school look like? And what skills and dispositions should our graduates achieve or be able to demonstrate when they graduate high school? And I met with teachers and faculties of all the 5 schools. We had a community-wide focus group on answering those two questions. And I also met with students at the high school to ask them those questions as well. And really what's important is that we develop a set of priorities that aren't just focused on the typical things like we need to be responsible for taxpayers' dollars. We need to make sure that our buildings are conducive to learning. We need to make sure that our students are achieving at a high level. Those are the typical priorities. And what I really wanted to identify is, what are our values? Like what things do we really hold near to us that are important? Because values also drive priorities, and they also drive budgets. And I didn't think that there wasn't a better book, I thought, to really get at the heart of what our values are than this book, because it talks about what really successful cultures do and what successful businesses and organizations and how they have found success and how they maintain success. So it's a really interesting book. It really talks about that different organizations and cultures build safety, they share vulnerability, and they have a strong sense of purpose. And having a strong sense of purpose is obviously something that's very important to a school system.
Mhm.
So it's a really good book because it helps you think about priorities in a different way through the lens of culture.
That is really interesting. And I love that, exactly, a school is a culture. It is, especially for the students, it's to some extent their entire world. So treating it in such a way is a great idea.
Right, and getting everyone's input on what the ideal school looks like is really important. And Kristine, do you mind if I share my screen with you really quick?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so in some of the work that we started to present, this is a kind of a slide about developing a strategic plan. And you're probably aware that a organization has a mission and a vision,
Yes.
but they also have, what's really important is a series of priorities. Because if you have those priorities, then you can kind of identify how you spend your time, how you spend your resources, and kind of where you're going in the future. And priorities are really accessible for measurable goals. And I mentioned before, these are the questions that that I asked. Oh, and that's strange. They're not. Let me just refresh my.
There we go.
See that now?
Yes.
Okay. So these were the questions that I asked in focus groups. What should the ideal school look like? How would you describe the ideal graduate? And then I asked each focus group to synthesize those ideas together and to have whole group conversations. So we did that as a community and different faculties as well. We had those conversations with students, and the students were so interested in identifying what the ideal school seemed like to them. I collected some videos, some testimonials, which were really interesting. And then everyone that submitted a response completed a survey. And so we have a lot of raw data that really gets at what the ideal school looked like and the ideal graduate. And we're running all that raw data through a software program that can triangulate what the major themes are. So for example, this may be a little bit hard to see, but it's based on commonly repeating themes or language. And so you can see here on the left, different topics. So problem solving was important, social emotional learning was important. And then for each topic, it identified what were the key words associated with that topic. So you've probably seen things like this, which is like kind of a Wordle there. These are the big ideas that emerged from the data. Another really important thing was that you could drill deep and you could look at, for problem solving or real world experiences, how did the community, the students, and the teachers rate those things? So for real world experiences, you can see that the community, students, and teachers kind of felt the same about that particular topic, that having relevant experiences for our students in schools was important. But this is another example of the data in terms of learning environment. Students identified learning environment as a far more impactful topic than the community and students than teachers. Obviously, the community and teachers think that learning environment is important, but look how teachers felt about it. Look how students felt about it. They really
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
And so I think that gets at the heart of kind of the book, right? Like how we feel in our classrooms and our schools is just as important as what we learn.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, because even if you're in a place where you're getting the best education, if you don't feel comfortable there, you're not going to get the full benefit.
Correct. Yeah. And the book was so interesting because it talked about these successful companies, and these companies and restaurants were ones that we are familiar with, right? Like the restaurant developed by Danny Meyer, Shake Shack. And, you know, we see Shake Shack in the city. We see them now popping up all over the place. There's one at the Danbury Mall as you drive into the mall. And they have a whole culture about how they treat customers. And they arrived at that culture by brainstorming what their priorities were and then identifying what their values were. So I don't know if you recall that part of the book, but let me see if I can find it for you. Getting closer, hold on.
Yeah, I mean, the idea of a strategic plan is such a great idea. And you're right, I would not have associated it with a school system. Like we have one here at the library, and we have a mission and a vision statement. And I mean, why not a school? It's a great idea.
Correct. And one of the things that's interesting in the book is that companies surveyed their employees and asked them, you know, do you know about what our vision and mission is? And they were expecting that 60% of their employees would at least know what their vision is, right? Their vision is meant to be the most important statement about where we're heading in the future. Only 5% of employees knew what the company's vision was.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of rethinking that framework that I showed you earlier about, you know, vision, mission, priorities. I'm really thinking that we need to identify values. And values are at the heart of culture. So for the Shake Shack and Denny Myers, they asked their colleagues to identify their priorities. And they said they identified their priorities in 5 ways: colleagues, guests, community, suppliers, and investors. So they really wanted to prioritize how they treat each other. And that was important. And then how they treat their guests. And I love the example of how when you're a returning customer and you come into the restaurant, the hostess knows that you prefer a table by the window. They know that you prefer breadsticks before your meal. And what amazing data to collect about what people's preferences are.
Yeah.
Right? And that gets at the heart of their priorities and their values.
And you always feel good and happy when you're going to any kind of a business, a restaurant, if it's even like a customer service thing online, and you get treated very well, you get treated with respect. If you go into a place and they remember you, like those things, that is how you build customers. And that is how you build, like you said, that community, that connection where you say, oh, well, I really want to go back to this place. And it's not necessarily because they have the best product even, which you hope that they have, because that's part of it. But it's because of how you feel and the culture.
Exactly. Yeah. And in one part in the book, they identified their priorities, but they also started to describe different aspects about their culture in a series of short little terms, right? And they said that was important because unless you can describe using language what your priorities are, then people forget kind of, that doesn't get ingrained in your culture. They came up with these little sayings like finding the yes, connecting the dots and connecting the dots, creating raves for guests, making the charitable assumption. And making the charitable assumption means that when someone behaves poorly, you avoid judging them and instead give them the benefit of the doubt. It's so interesting. They identified skunking, right? The term skunking, I don't know if you remember that, but They said skunking is spraying negative energy into the workplace as skunks do when they're frightened. So basically,
That's
avoid
good.
doing that. Avoid
Yeah,
that activity.
I love that. Spraying negative and energy throughout a workplace. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Yeah. So they just listed all of these different values,
Mhm.
which really defined, you treat people with respect, you make the charitable assumption, you avoid skunking in the workplace, and they go on and on and on.
Yeah.
And all of their employees are aware of these values, which kind of filters down to the environment, which they want their restaurants to feel like home.
Mhm.
So just imagine, as a school system, the similarities there,
Mhm.
and how we want our teachers and our students to feel when they enter our schools.
Mhm.
And how do we help our leaders develop that framework that will also define who we are, what we believe, what our values are in our school system? That's just as important about as to how well students achieve.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I love that choice of a book. I think it's such a great connection to what you do and how we hope that our schools can be, and they can be wonderful places like that. And they are. And I love that there's more plans to keep that moving forward.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the work and working with our teachers and leaders and all of our staff
Mhm.
to kind of really define, what makes us great and what that looks like moving forward.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Dr. McKinnon, for coming and joining me on Easton Library Community Book Chat. And the book, again, is The Culture Code, and it's available here at the library. You can either pop in and ask for it, or you can check the catalog online and look for it.
Great.
And I hope that your summer goes wonderfully, and I hope that next year is just another great year for you and ER9 schools.
Thank you so much, Kristine, and I look forward to working with you in the library soon and getting to know you better.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, have a great summer.
Thank you. You too.
Bye.